Hi, Gene Burnett from GeneBurnett.com. Hey, I thought we'd talk a little bit today about aging, posture, and a little bit about Tai Chi, but mostly it's about posture and aging. So there are three major, painfully tender, sore, injury-prone areas in the older person's body. I bet you can guess what they are. Knees, low back, neck. Those are three major problem areas for most old people. You ask someone over 60, how's your back feeling? I'll probably give you a little, a little list of things. Or how's your neck feeling? How's your head feeling? Or how's your knees feeling, right? So as you get older, there are some really simple things that you can do to alleviate these problem areas so that they are less prone to give you trouble. Now, it helps if you practice Tai Chi or yoga or some kind of regular posture discipline to reinforce these things, especially if you have some major imbalances that are really affecting these three areas, right? So if you spend a lot of time sitting and a lot of time with your back curved over and a lot of time with your chin out over your body like that, or if your knees collapse inward or you don't spend much time on or in your legs, then these points are going to be more challenging. And it's really a smart thing to do to undertake a moderate Tai Chi or yoga practice in your life to make life easier for the person down the line older than you. If you want a capacity to be there for you when you're old, like if you still want to walk when you're 60 or walk when you're 70 or walk when you're 80, walk now. Start walking now, because it's not just going to appear there for you. You have to be doing it regularly. It's not just enough to know how to walk. You have to be walking regularly for that to be there for you under pressure. And guess what? Getting older is pressure, right? So here's some stuff that can alleviate and make these three problem areas, knees, low back, and head and neck, less painful, less of a problem, less painful in your future. So I'm going to push the chair aside and go back over there, and hopefully the mic will still pick me up. Okay, so a lot of people, when they stand, their knees collapse inward this way, or they lock their knees this way, so the knees are moving backwards. So one of the simple things you can do to alleviate and prevent knee pain is bend your knees a little bit whenever you're standing. It's so simple. It's hard if you're not used to it because your legs aren't used to bearing your weight, but bend your knees a little bit, right? And a second thing that's very important is point your knees and toes the same direction. So don't let your knees cave in like this. An easy way to do that is to just think of sitting on a motorcycle or a very skinny horse so that there's space here. They call that rounding the inner thighs in Tai Chi, but it's a sense of making space from the groins to the knees. The whole femur kind of moves that way. A little bit of rotation involved in that. You got to experiment a little bit, but don't let your knees go towards each other. If your pants are rubbing against each other when you walk, your knees are pronated. So you need to bring that out a little bit and let your knees point the same direction as your toes. Try to keep space here. Even if your feet are fairly close together, don't let them sag inwards that way, the knees. Keep that space, right? It's a good idea to stand with your feet under your hips anyway, just for balance, right? When your feet are together, you're more tippy. So a little bit of space there is also good. So your feet are flat, your knees are bent, your inner thighs rounded. That goes a long way towards putting your weight in your thighs and not in your knees. So instead of the usual knees back, hips forward, we want the opposite. Knees forward, hips back. Which brings us to the next area. We want to sit into this hip crease. It's the same crease you'd make if you were going to jump up in the air, or if you're downhill skiing, or about to jump, about to dive. You want to keep a crease there, excuse me, crease here, and a slight tuck here, just a little one, just your tailbone going down a little bit. So crease, tuck. So when you do that crease here, instead of forward, not flat, in here, tuck a little bit, that puts even more of your body, torso, upper body weight into your thighs, which strengthens your thighs, which protects your knees and makes that easier. So feet and knees pointing the same direction, a space between the knees a little bit of inner rounding there, space between the knees like you're sitting on a horse. Sit into this crease and then tuck your hips a little bit. All that puts work in your thighs and stress off your knees. Now, if we think of lifting the chest, we usually kind of lift the chest like this. It's the surface of your body, your chest. So instead of thinking of lift your chest, think of lift your heart, because your heart is dead center in the middle of your body. There's about as much distance forward and back, more or less, and even side to side, it's kind of symmetrical. Your heart is kind of in the center. So if you just think of lifting the heart a little bit, and not talking about way, way up here. So you got your feet and knees pointing the same direction, you got your knees bent, you got a little bit of space between your knees, you got a crease here, you got a little bit of a tuck there, then lift your heart an inch. That takes the pressure off the low back and allows your knees to be the shock absorber of your body instead of your low back. Locking your knees also makes your low back the shock absorber, which it's terrible at. So the knees are really good at it, see? So, feet, knees, rounded, sit, crease, lift the heart a little bit. And that takes the pressure off the low back and makes life much easier. We spend so much time rounded over, hunched over computers and screens and stuff. And this lift of the heart, provided you have a base to do that, right? I just did a video recently, hips, heart, head, 3 air posture areas to check as you do your Tai Chi or yoga or whatever. In this case, we're just going to go below that and start with the feet, knees, that spacious feeling in here, sitting into the crease, tucking the hips, and then when you lift the heart a little bit, you're sparing your low back a lot of pressure and compression, which is what causes pain and trouble as the years go by. The third part is easy. It's just taking your head on a diagonal line back and up, like you had a suction cup back here and it's pulling up that way, right? So you can think of going down and then back, but I prefer the pull back, right? So that sets your head more or less over your heart, which is over your hips, which is over your feet. So that alleviates a lot of neck pain. A lot of neck strain comes from this trapezius muscles trying to pull your head back. I think of it like a charioteer, and your nose is like the horse going this way, and the charioteer has got his feet on your shoulders going, no, and he's trying to keep your head from falling off. So when you bring the horses in and just bring them over to here, then the trapezius can relax a little bit, you know, or whatever other muscles are involved in the neck, holding up your neck. So again, just to review, good, you know, keeping your feet firmly on the ground, knees always a little bent, a little bit of rounding in here, sitting here, tucking here a little bit, and lifting your heart. That puts your body weight in your thighs, which protects your knees, and the lift of the heart takes pressure off the low back, and then you just take your head back a little bit, and that takes pressure off the neck. And right there, those simple little things there make your older years a lot easier because you're not slumped here like this. We spend a lot of time like this these days doing stuff like this. And I'm not saying that you necessarily need to sit in your chair at your computer or looking at your phone in perfect yogic or Tai Chi posture as you move through your life. What I'm saying is, anytime you can, just check. Bend your knees a little bit. Sit into that hip crease, tuck your hips a little, lift your heart a little, take your head back. You could do that once every 20 minutes of sitting at the computer, or any time that you just happen to be still, waiting in the line for the bank, or the toast to toast, or the soup to heat up, or whatever. Just find your feet, find your knees, space a little bit like you're riding a skinny horse, sit into your hips, tuck them a little bit, lift the heart a little, drop your head back, drop your head and take it back a little bit, and then when I do this, if I have neck tension and I do this, the beginnings of a headache just disappear. When I do this, my low back feels great. I've got a congenital problem back here that's hobbled me my whole life. And as I become more and more focused on this, it's just gotten better and better and better. My sacrum right now is probably the least sore it's ever been. So this is good stuff. So I don't base my postural corrections and stuff and my postural ideas on too much on dogma and tradition and meridian lines and all that kind of stuff. I've heard of it. I certainly spent time honoring the tradition I came up in. But what I really do is pressure test this stuff in my own life to see if it helps me be in less pain. So if any of the stuff that I just did makes me out of alignment with some internal arts, Chinese medicine, real or hocus pocus dogma, I don't care, because my neck feels better and my low back feels better and my knees feel great. So that's more important to me than conforming to a dogma. So I always insist on some personal experience of doing it the correct way, actually making me feel better. Because there are people out there telling people to do things that I think are medically incorrect. Like they're doing an exercise in a way that twists their knees, for instance. And I go, I don't care what the dogma is. I'm not twisting my knees like that. I've seen many, many so-called masters, and I thought, he may be a master and ranked, and maybe he knows stuff or forms or ideas that I don't know. Maybe he can even kick my ass, but I'm not trading knees with him because I know too much about knees, especially my knees. And if I did that twisty thing, my knees would be hurting. So if you want to do your older self a favor, think about these simple postural things. Line up your feet and your knees in the same direction. Create a little space between your thighs. Sit into the front of your hips. Tuck the back of the hips. Lift the heart a little bit. Take your head back on a diagonal a little bit. And if you just address those simple things, hopefully you'll be in less pain as you get older. Look around you at the people who are older than you and ask yourself, do I want that to be my life? If you see a person like me who can still do pull-ups and still teach, 15, 20 hours a week and still ride a bike everywhere I go and still, do push-ups and hit pads and be mobile and relatively painless, and you think, wow, this guy's 66 and he can do that, maybe I'll listen to what the hell he's talking about. Or if you see someone older than you who looks miserable and in pain all the time, you might think, maybe I don't want to end up like this. Maybe I should start practicing now. And if you want to do a simple practice that doesn't involve a whole raft of, training exercises and Tai Chi yoga systems and all that stuff, which is great, this is what I do in my life. But if you don't want to do that, these things, the legs, the hips, the lift, the tuck, just those alone will hopefully, prevent a lot of pain and discomfort for the old person in your future. May you be lucky enough to have an old person in your future. And if you do these things, and that person will look back at you and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Just like I do to my younger self. I go, oh, thank you so much. Every time I see someone my age or younger who can barely walk or barely jump or barely move, I just think, thank God I started this a long time ago. So thanks for listening. I appreciate it. If you want to help me out with a little tip or something, I got a tip jar underneath this video. Also one over at my website. Not expected or why I do this. It's just a nice little shot in the arm for me when I get a tip. No tip is too small or too big. Main thing I do this for is to be helpful. So if any of this is helpful, always appreciate a comment saying, thanks, that helped. All right, you take care. Until next time.